The rain hit the wooden porch like bullets, and Zinnia Ashford stood frozen at her door, staring at the man who had haunted her dreams for 6 months, water streaming down his face as lightning split the New Mexico sky behind him. "I rode 3 days just to tell you I'm sorry," Isaac Durant said, his voice barely audible over the thunder that shook the small house on the outskirts of Chloride. Zinnia's hand tightened on the doorframe, her knuckles white. The last time she had seen this man, he had been riding away from her father's ranch without looking back, leaving her standing in the dust with tears streaming down her face, and a heart so broken she thought she might die from the pain. That had been in March of 1885, and now it was September, and here he stood, drenched and exhausted, his dark eyes pleading with her to let him explain. "You should not have come," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, rehearsed all the cruel things she would say to him if she ever saw him again. But now that he was here, flesh and blood and soaking wet, all those practiced speeches vanished like smoke. "I know," Isaac said. "I know I have no right to be here. I know I do not deserve even a minute of your time, but I had to come. I had to tell you what happened, why I left the way I did." Another crack of thunder made Zinnia jump, and she saw Isaac's horse behind him, a beautiful black mare that looked as exhausted as her rider. The animal's head hung low and steam rose from her wet coat. "Your horse needs shelter," Zinnia said, and Isaac's face showed a flicker of hope. "Does that mean you will listen to me?" Zinnia stepped back from the door. "It means I will not let an animal suffer because of your mistakes. Bring her to the barn. Then we will talk." She watched as Isaac led the mare toward the small barn behind the house, his movements stiff and slow. He had clearly been riding hard, and exhaustion showed in every step. Zinnia closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had moved to this small house in Chloride 3 months ago, trying to escape the memories that haunted her at her father's ranch. Her father, Thomas Ashford, had died 2 months after Isaac left, and the ranch had been sold to pay his debts. Zinnia had taken what little money remained and bought this modest property, determined to make a life for herself without depending on anyone else. She took in sewing and did laundry for the miners in town, barely making enough to survive, but at least it was honest work and kept her too busy to think about Isaac Durant. Except she thought about him anyway, every single day. The door opened, and Isaac stepped inside, removing his hat and holding it in his hands. Water dripped onto the wooden floor, forming a puddle at his feet. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and his clothes clung to his muscular frame. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face more lined with worry and fatigue. "You can dry yourself by the fire," Zinnia said, gesturing to the small fireplace where flames crackled and danced. "I will make coffee." "Thank you," Isaac said quietly. Zinnia busied herself with the coffee pot, grateful for something to do with her hands. She could feel Isaac's eyes on her, and it took all her strength not to turn around and look at him. She had loved this man with every fiber of her being. When he came to work at her father's ranch last year, she had been instantly drawn to him. Isaac was different from the other ranch hands, educated and well-spoken, but also strong and capable. He read books in the evenings and could quote Shakespeare. He had treated her with respect and kindness, and slowly, carefully, they had fallen in love, or at least she thought they had. "Your hair is longer," Isaac said, breaking the silence. Zinnia touched the braid that hung down her back. "It has been 6 months. I know exactly how long it has been. I have counted every day." She turned to face him then, anger flashing in her blue eyes. "If you have been counting the days, then you know how long I waited for you, how long I stood at that gate, watching the road, hoping you would come back. How long I cried myself to sleep wondering what I had done wrong. Isaac took a step toward her, his hand still clutching his hat. You did nothing wrong. Zinnia, please, you have to believe me. What happened was not about you. Then what was it about? She demanded. We were supposed to be married. You asked my father for permission and he gave it. We were planning our life together, and then one morning I woke up and you were gone. No note, no explanation, nothing. You just vanished. I left because I had to, Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. I left because staying would have put you in danger. Zinnia stared at him. What are you talking about? Isaac set his hat on a chair and ran his hand through his wet hair. My real name is Isaac Durant, but that is not the name I was born with. I grew up in Texas on a ranch not unlike your father's. When I was 21, I caught the foreman stealing cattle and selling them. He was an important man, well connected, and when I reported him to the law, he had me arrested instead. He claimed I was the thief, and because he had friends in high places, they believed him. I was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Zinnia's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! I served 3 years before they discovered the truth. Another ranch hand came forward with evidence that proved my innocence. I was released, but by then, my reputation was destroyed. The foreman, a man named Garrett Hughes, swore he would make me pay for ruining him. He lost his position and his standing in the community because of me, and he became obsessed with revenge. Isaac walked closer to the fire, holding his hands out to warm them. I changed my name and started moving from place to place, taking work where I could find it. I thought I had finally escaped him when I came to your father's ranch. I thought I could start over, build a new life. And then I met you, and everything changed. You were the most beautiful, kind, intelligent woman I had ever known. Falling in love with you was as natural as breathing. Tears streamed down Zinnia's face, but she did not interrupt. The morning I left, I received a telegram. Someone had seen me in chloride and told Garrett Hughes where I was. He was coming, and he had sworn to kill anyone I cared about. The telegram was from an old friend warning me. I had maybe a day before Hughes arrived. I could not risk staying, could not risk him finding out about you, so I left. I rode north, leaving a trail that would lead him away from here. I led him all the way to Colorado. Why did you not tell me? Zinnia whispered. Why did you not explain? Because I thought if you knew the truth, you might try to come with me or wait for me. I thought it would be easier for you to hate me and move on with your life. I thought I was protecting you. You were wrong, Zinnia said fiercely. You should have trusted me with the truth. You should have let me make my own choice. I know that now, Isaac said. I have spent the last 6 months thinking about nothing else. I led Hughes on a chase across 3 territories. He finally caught up with me in Denver. We faced each other, and I thought one of us would die that day. But something unexpected happened. A marshal who had been tracking Hughes for other crimes arrived and arrested him. Turns out I was not the only man he had sworn revenge against. He had killed 2 people in his quest for vengeance. He is in prison now, awaiting trial for murder. He will hang. Isaac moved closer to Zinnia, his eyes searching hers. As soon as I knew he could not hurt you, I started riding back. I went to your father's ranch first, but the new owners told me about his passing. I am so sorry, Zinnia. I know how much you loved him. They told me you had moved to chloride, and I have been riding for 3 days straight to find you. I had to tell you the truth. I had to apologize for the pain I caused you. I do not expect you to forgive me or take me back. I just needed you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done, and not a day has passed that I have not regretted it. The coffee pot began to boil over, and Zinnia turned quickly to move it from the heat. Her hands shook as she poured 2 cups, adding sugar to both the way Isaac liked it. She handed him a cup and watched as he wrapped his cold hands around it gratefully. My father died of a heart condition, she said quietly. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done. But I think losing the ranch broke his spirit. He had so much debt I never knew about. After you left, I think he just gave up fighting. I am so sorry, Isaac said again. Zinnia sipped her coffee, studying Isaac over the rim of her cup. He looked sincere, his eyes red-rimmed with fatigue and emotion. She wanted to believe him, wanted to throw herself into his arms and forgive him everything. But the pain of the last 6 months held her back. I almost married someone else, she said, and saw Isaac flinch as if she had struck him. Did you love him? No, but he was kind and he offered security. He owns a store in town. His name is Robert Mills. He asked me to marry him 2 weeks ago. What did you tell him? Isaac's voice was barely a whisper. I told him I needed time to think about it. I told him I would give him my answer tomorrow. Isaac set down his coffee cup, his hands trembling. Do you want to marry him? Zinnia looked at the man standing before her, the man who had broken her heart and come back to put the pieces together again. She thought about Robert Mills, who was reliable and steady but made her feel nothing. She thought about the 6 months of grief and anger and loneliness she had endured, and she thought about how her heart had leaped when she opened the door and saw Isaac standing there. I want the truth about everything, she said. No more secrets, no more lies meant to protect me. If we are going to have any chance at all, you have to promise me complete honesty. Hope bloomed in Isaac's eyes. I promise. I swear on my life I will never keep anything from you again. Then tell me everything. Tell me about prison, about this man Hughes, about where you have been and what you have done. I want to know all of it. They sat at her small kitchen table, and Isaac talked. He told her about the brutal years in prison, about learning to survive among violent men. He told her about the day he was released, about the shame of being marked as an ex-convict even after his innocence was proven. He told her about the jobs he had taken, the places he had been, always looking over his shoulder, always waiting for Garrett Hughes to find him. He told her about meeting an old rancher in Wyoming who took a chance on him, who taught him everything about cattle and horses and gave him a reason to keep going. That rancher had died, leaving Isaac a small sum of money that he had saved carefully. He told her about coming to New Mexico with hope in his heart, thinking he could finally build a life. And he told her about falling in love with her, about how she had made him want to be a better man. When I left, I wanted to die, Isaac said, his voice breaking. Every mile I rode away from you felt like a knife in my chest. But I told myself that you would be safe, that you would find someone else, someone better than me, someone who could give you the life you deserved. I told myself that your safety was worth any amount of pain I had to endure. Zinnia reached across the table and took his hand. I understand why you did what you did. But Isaac, you have to understand something too. I am not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from the truth. I am strong enough to face danger, strong enough to make my own choices. If you had told me about Hughes, we could have faced him together. We could have gone to the law or we could have left together, but you took that choice away from me. You are right, Isaac said, squeezing her hand. And I promise I will never do that again. Whatever comes, we face it together. If you will have me. The storm outside had begun to ease, the thunder more distant now. Rain still pattered against the windows, but the violence of the tempest had passed. Zinnia looked at their joined hands, at the calluses on Isaac's fingers from hard work, at the scar on his wrist from a barbed wire fence. She looked at his face, at the lines of suffering and hope, and she made her decision. I will have you, she said softly. But you need to understand what you are getting. I am not the same woman you left 6 months ago. I have learned to take care of myself. I have my own business, my own home. I will not give up my independence to become just someone's wife. Isaac's face broke into a smile that transformed him, making him look younger and happier than she had ever seen him. I would not want you to. I love your strength and independence. I love that you survived and built a life for yourself. I want to be your partner, not your keeper. Then we will try again, Zinnia said. Slowly this time. We will court properly, get to know each other again. And if it works, if we can rebuild the trust that was broken, then maybe we can talk about marriage. I will wait as long as it takes, Isaac said. I will spend every day proving to you that I am worthy of your love. Zinnia stood up, and Isaac did the same. They stood facing each other across the small kitchen, the air between them electric with possibility. Then Zinnia stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, feeling his strong arms come around her in return. He was cold and damp from the rain, but she did not care. She pressed her face against his chest and listened to the strong, steady beat of his heart. I missed you so much, she whispered. I missed you too, Isaac said, his lips brushing her hair. Every single day. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as the storm outside died away completely. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac looked reluctant to let her go. You need dry clothes and sleep, Zinnia said practically. The barn has a small room attached where ranch hands used to sleep when my father owned this place. There is a bed and blankets. You can stay there tonight. Thank you, Isaac said. Tomorrow I will find somewhere in town to stay, somewhere proper until we figure things out. Tomorrow we will talk to Robert Mills, Zinnia said. I need to tell him I cannot marry him. It would not be fair to lead him on. Isaac nodded. I will go with you if you want, or I will stay away if that would be easier. I will tell him alone, Zinnia decided. It is the right thing to do. She found some old clothes that had belonged to her father, trousers and a shirt that would be a bit small on Isaac's larger frame but at least would be dry. She also found an extra blanket and a bar of soap. There is a pump in the barn, she said. The water will be cold, but you can wash up. Isaac took the clothes gratefully. At the door, he turned back to look at her. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for coming back, Zinnia said. Thank you for telling me the truth. After Isaac left for the barn, Zinnia sat down in her rocking chair by the fire and tried to process everything that had happened. 2 hours ago, she had been preparing for bed, resigned to a life without passion or love. Now Isaac was back, and all the feelings she had tried to bury came flooding to the surface. She was scared and hopeful and angry and happy all at once. She thought about Robert Mills, about his proposal and his expectations. He was a good man, but she did not love him, and it would be cruel to marry him knowing that her heart belonged to someone else. She would tell him tomorrow, and she hoped he would understand. Sleep was impossible, so Zinnia sat and watched the fire burn low. She thought about her father, wishing he were still alive so she could ask his advice. Thomas Ashford had liked Isaac, had approved of their engagement before Isaac disappeared. She thought he would want her to give Isaac another chance, to listen to his explanations and make her own choice. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Zinnia finally dozed off in her chair. She woke to a gentle knock on the door and found Isaac standing on her porch, freshly washed and wearing her father's clothes. He looked better after some rest, though exhaustion still shadowed his eyes. I did not want to presume breakfast, he said. But I fed and watered my horse and I mucked out your barn. I hope that is all right. You did not have to do that, Zinnia said, but she was pleased. Come in. I will make eggs and biscuits. They ate together in comfortable silence, and Zinnia was reminded of all the mornings they had shared meals at her father's ranch. Isaac had always been easy to be around, never needing to fill every silence with chatter. It was one of the things she had loved about him. After breakfast, Zinnia changed into her best dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She pinned up her hair carefully and put on her mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry she owned. "You look beautiful," Isaac said when she emerged. "I want to look respectable when I break a good man's heart," Zinnia said sadly. The walk into Chloride took 20 minutes. It was a small town built around the silver mines that had drawn prospectors to this part of New Mexico. The main street was lined with businesses: a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a hotel, and Mills Mercantile where Robert worked. "I will wait out here," Isaac said when they reached the store. Zinnia nodded and went inside. Robert Mills stood behind the counter, organizing bolts of fabric. He was a pleasant-looking man in his early 30s with brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard. When he saw Zinnia, his face lit up. "Zinnia, I was hoping you would come by today. Have you thought about my proposal?" "I have," Zinnia said, her heart heavy. "Robert, can we talk somewhere private?" His smile faded, and he led her to the back room where supplies were stored. "You are going to say no?" "I am so sorry," Zinnia said. "You have been nothing but kind to me, and you deserve someone who loves you completely. I care about you, but not in the way a wife should care about her husband. It would not be fair to either of us to marry without that love." Robert was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. You have always seemed like your heart was somewhere else. Is it that cowboy who just rode into town, the one who is standing outside my store?" Zinnia was surprised. "How did you know?" "The way you are dressed today, the way your eyes look different, and the way that man is watching this store like he is guarding gold. I may not have your heart, but I am not blind." "I am sorry," Zinnia said again. "Do not be," Robert said, though his voice was sad. "I would rather know the truth than spend my life with someone who wishes she was elsewhere. I hope he deserves you." "So do I," Zinnia said honestly. She left the store feeling both relieved and guilty. Isaac stood where she had left him, and he searched her face anxiously. "How did it go?" "As well as could be expected. He is a good man." He understood. They walked through town, and Zinnia pointed out the places where she did business: the boarding house where she did laundry, the dress shop where she sold her sewing, the church where she attended services on Sunday. "Have you thought about what you will do for work?" Zinnia asked. "Chloride is a mining town mostly. There are not many ranches nearby." "I have some money saved," Isaac said. "I thought I might buy some land, start a small ranch, or I could work in the mines if I need to. I will do whatever it takes to stay near you." Over the next few weeks, Isaac did exactly that. He found a small piece of land a few miles outside town that was for sale cheap because it was rocky and hard to work. But it had good water and enough grazing for horses. Isaac used his savings to buy it and immediately set to work building a small cabin and corrals. Zinnia visited him often, bringing food and helping where she could. She watched as he worked from dawn to dusk, clearing rocks and digging post holes. His hands became blistered and bloody, but he never complained. At night, he would ride to her house, and they would sit on her porch talking for hours. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt what had been broken. Isaac told her more about his life, about his family in Texas who had died of fever when he was young, about his dreams for the future. Zinnia told him about her mother, who had died giving birth to a stillborn baby when Zinnia was 10, about how she had learned to run her father's household from that young age. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing their hopes and fears. And gradually, trust grew between them again, stronger this time because it was built on honesty and understanding. Isaac courted her properly, bringing her wildflowers he picked on his land, taking her to church socials and town dances. The people of Chloride watched with interest, and there was some gossip about the cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere, but Zinnia did not care. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time in months. One evening in November, Isaac rode to her house at sunset. He had been working on his cabin all day, and Zinnia could see sawdust in his dark hair, but he looked happy, his eyes bright with excitement. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." Zinnia climbed up behind him on his horse, wrapping her arms around his waist as they rode toward his land. The setting sun painted the desert in shades of orange and purple, and the air was cool with the promise of winter. When they reached his property, Zinnia gasped. The cabin was finished. It was small but sturdy, built from logs Isaac had hauled down from the mountains. It had a solid roof, real glass windows, and a front porch. Smoke rose from the chimney and warm light glowed from inside. "You finished it," Zinnia said in wonder. "I wanted to show you what I can provide," Isaac said. "I know it is not much, but it is honest work and it is ours. If you will have it, if you will have me." He dismounted and helped her down, then led her inside. The cabin was one large room with a stone fireplace at one end, a kitchen area with a good stove, and space for a bed and furniture. It was simple but clean and well built. "I know we said we would take things slowly," Isaac said, taking both her hands in his. "And I do not want to rush you. But Zinnia, I love you. I have loved you since the moment I met you, and I will love you until the day I die. I want to marry you, build a life with you, grow old with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to have children with you and raise them to be strong and kind like their mother. Will you marry me?" Zinnia looked around the cabin, seeing all the work and love Isaac had put into it. She thought about the last few months, about how he had proven himself over and over, about how being with him felt like coming home. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I will marry you." Isaac pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and passion and love. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Isaac said, "but I will get you one, I promise." "I do not need a ring," Zinnia said. "I just need you." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Chloride. Zinnia wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Isaac wore a new suit he had bought in town, and he looked so handsome Zinnia could hardly breathe when she saw him waiting for her at the altar. The ceremony was small, attended by the friends they had made in Chloride. Robert Mills came, shaking Isaac's hand and wishing them well with genuine warmth. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about facing life's challenges together, and when Isaac slipped a plain gold band on Zinnia's finger, she felt complete in a way she never had before. The townspeople hosted a celebration afterward, with food and music and dancing. Zinnia danced with her new husband under strings of lanterns, feeling like she was floating on air. When someone asked her if she was happy, she could only nod, too overcome with emotion to speak. As the evening drew to a close, Isaac and Zinnia rode back to the cabin together. Isaac had spent the week furnishing it, building a proper bed frame and a table with chairs. He had bought dishes and cooking pots, curtains for the windows, and soft blankets for the bed. It was a home, their home, and Zinnia loved every inch of it. That night, as they lay in bed together for the first time as husband and wife, Isaac pulled her close and whispered, "Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for believing in me." "Thank you for coming back," Zinnia whispered back. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me the truth." They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies and hearts, and afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked about their dreams for the future. "I want to expand the ranch," Isaac said. "I want to buy more horses, maybe some cattle. I want to build something we can be proud of, something we can pass down to our children. I want to keep sowing, Zinnia said. I like having my own work, my own money to contribute, and I want to teach our children to read and write, to give them opportunities we did not have. We will do all of it, Isaac promised. Together. The first year of their marriage was hard work but filled with joy. Isaac proved to be as skilled a rancher as Zinnia had known he would be. He bought 3 horses and trained them to sell, making a small profit that they immediately invested back into the ranch. Zinnia continued her sewing business, and together they saved every penny they could. They faced challenges, certainly. There was a drought that first summer that killed their vegetable garden and dried up one of their water sources. There was the time Isaac was thrown from a green horse and broke his arm, unable to work for 6 weeks while it healed. There were the usual struggles of any new marriage, learning to live together and compromise and communicate. But through it all, they loved each other fiercely. Isaac kept his promise of complete honesty, sharing his worries and fears as readily as his hopes. And Zinnia learned to trust him completely, knowing he would never leave her again, that they would face whatever came together. In the spring of 1887, Zinnia discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited until she was certain before telling Isaac. She chose a Sunday evening after they had finished a simple dinner. Isaac was reading a book by lamplight and Zinnia sat beside him, working on a quilt for a customer in town. "Isaac," she said quietly, "I have something to tell you." He looked up immediately, hearing something in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Zinnia said, smiling. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." The book fell from Isaac's hands as he stared at her in wonder. Then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Zinnia asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not begin to describe what I am feeling," Isaac said. He placed his hand gently on her stomach, which was still flat. "Hello in there, little one. Your mother and I cannot wait to meet you." The months that followed were magical. Isaac became even more protective of Zinnia, insisting she not lift heavy things or work too hard. Zinnia tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from love. She continued her sewing as long as she could, saving money for the baby's arrival. Isaac built a cradle from smooth pine, carving delicate flowers into the headboard. Zinnia sewed tiny clothes and soft blankets. They argued good-naturedly about names, unable to agree on anything. But they both glowed with anticipation, counting down the days until they would become parents. The baby came in early December, during a cold snap that left frost on the windows. Zinnia's labor started before dawn, and Isaac rode to town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Harrison, who had delivered half the babies in chloride. The labor was long and difficult, lasting well into the night. Isaac paced outside the bedroom, terrified by Zinnia's cries of pain. He had faced down violent criminals and dangerous situations, but nothing had ever scared him as much as hearing his wife suffer. Finally, just after midnight, a baby's cry pierced the air. Mrs. Harrison emerged from the bedroom, smiling broadly. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy baby boy. Your wife is tired but well." Isaac rushed into the bedroom to find Zinnia propped up against pillows, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket. She looked exhausted but radiant, her face glowing with love as she gazed at their child. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Isaac approached slowly, almost reverently. When Zinnia pulled back the blanket, he saw a tiny red face, eyes scrunched closed, a wisp of dark hair on his head. The baby was perfect, impossibly small and precious. "Can I hold him?" Isaac asked, his voice trembling. Zinnia carefully transferred the baby into Isaac's arms, showing him how to support the small head. Isaac looked down at his son, and tears streamed down his face. "Hello, little man," he whispered. "I am your papa. I promise I will always protect you. I promise I will always be here for you. I promise I will be the father you deserve." "What should we name him?" Zinnia asked. They had discussed so many names, but none of them felt right in this moment. Isaac looked at his son, at Zinnia, at the warm little cabin that was their home. "Thomas," he said finally, "after your father." "Thomas Durant. So part of your father lives on in our son." Zinnia's eyes filled with tears. "Papa would have loved that. Thomas it is." Baby Thomas was a good child, sleeping well and eating hungrily. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, getting up in the night to help with feedings, walking the floor with Thomas when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint. Zinnia watched her husband with their son and fell even more in love with him, if that was possible. As Thomas grew, the ranch grew too. Isaac's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and people came from surrounding towns to buy his horses or have him train theirs. The money was good, and they were able to expand their herd and improve their property. Zinnia's sewing business continued to thrive, and she taught herself to work with Thomas strapped to her back in the tradition of the Apache women who lived in the area. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and hard winters, sick animals and lean months. But Isaac and Zinnia faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each challenge they overcame. When Thomas was 3 years old, Zinnia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1891, she gave birth to a daughter. They named her Rose, for the wild roses that grew near their water source. Rose had Zinnia's blue eyes and Isaac's dark hair, and she was a happy, laughing child from the start. 2 years later, another son arrived whom they named James. And 3 years after that, a second daughter they called Lily completed their family. The cabin that had seemed so spacious when it was just Isaac and Zinnia was bursting at the seams with 4 children, and Isaac spent a year building an addition that doubled the size of their home. The children grew up strong and healthy, learning to ride horses before they could read, helping with ranch work as soon as they were able. Thomas was serious and responsible, much like his father. Rose was adventurous and bold, always getting into mischief. James was gentle and loved animals, spending hours caring for any creature that was sick or injured. And Lily was artistic, drawing pictures and making up songs. Isaac proved to be an exceptional father, patient and loving but firm when needed. He taught his sons everything he knew about ranching and horses. He taught his daughters the same things, believing girls should have the same opportunities as boys. He read to them every evening, sharing his love of books and learning. And he taught them all about honesty and integrity, about the importance of family and community. Zinnia watched her children grow and saw pieces of Isaac and herself in each of them. She sewed their clothes and taught them to read and write, preparing them for school when they were old enough. She told them stories about their grandfather Thomas, keeping his memory alive. And she showed them through her example what it meant to be strong and independent. The years passed quickly, marked by small joys and occasional sorrows. There was the year a wildfire threatened their ranch, and neighbors came from miles around to help fight it. There was the terrible winter when half their herd died, and they struggled to rebuild. There was the day Thomas rode his first horse alone, and the day Rose caught her first fish, and the day James nursed a wounded hawk back to health, and the day Lily won a prize for her drawings at the county fair. Through it all, Isaac and Zinnia's love remained constant. They still sat on their porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still talked for hours about everything and nothing. They still made love with the passion of newlyweds, even after years of marriage. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac gave Zinnia a beautiful necklace he had bought from a jeweler in Albuquerque. It was a delicate silver chain with a pendant shaped like a flower, with a tiny diamond in the center. "I know I promised you I did not need expensive things," Zinnia said, touched by the gift, "but this is beautiful." "You deserve beautiful things," Isaac said. "You deserve everything good in this world. I wish I could give you more." "You have given me everything that matters," Zinnia said. "You gave me your love, your honesty, your loyalty. You gave me our children and our home and our life together. I could not ask for anything more." They held each other close, remembering that stormy night so many years ago when Isaac had appeared at her door. They had come so far since then, overcome so much, built something beautiful from the ashes of heartbreak. As the children grew older, they began to ask questions about their parents' courtship. One evening, when Thomas was 12 and the younger children gathered around, they asked how their parents had met. Isaac and Zinnia looked at each other and smiled. Then, Isaac began the story, telling them about coming to work at their grandfather's ranch, about falling in love with their mother. He told them about having to leave, about the 3 days he rode to come back and apologize. "I arrived at your mother's door in a storm," Isaac said. "And I told her I rode 3 days just to say I was sorry. It was the best decision I ever made." "Did Mama forgive you right away?" Rose asked. "She made me work for it," Isaac said, grinning at Zinnia. "And I am still working for it every day." "You never have to work for my forgiveness," Zinnia said. "You won my heart again the moment you had the courage to come back and tell me the truth." The children peppered them with questions, and Isaac and Zinnia answered them honestly, leaving out only the parts that were too adult for young ears. They wanted their children to understand that love was not always easy, that it required courage and honesty and hard work. But they also wanted them to know that it was worth fighting for, that true love could overcome almost anything. Years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. New Mexico achieved statehood in 1912, and the family celebrated along with the rest of the territory. The children grew into young adults, each finding their own path. Thomas stayed on the ranch, taking over more of the daily operations as Isaac grew older. Rose shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to be a teacher and left for the normal school in Las Cruces. James became a veterinarian, studying with the doctor in town before going away to school. And Lily married a kind young man who worked at the bank and moved to Santa Fe. Isaac and Zinnia became grandparents, delighting in the babies their children brought home. They passed down family stories and traditions, teaching their grandchildren the same values they had taught their own children. As they aged, their love only deepened. Zinnia's hair turned silver, and Isaac's back grew stiff from decades of hard work. But they still held hands on their porch every evening. They still talked for hours. They still looked at each other with the same love and desire they had felt as young newlyweds. On a warm evening in the spring of 1920, Isaac and Zinnia sat on their porch watching the sunset. Their children and grandchildren had all been there for Sunday dinner, and the house still smelled of roast chicken and apple pie. Now it was just the two of them, as it had been so many times before. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked suddenly. "Marrying me, I mean." "We have had a good life, but it has been a hard life. Maybe you could have had something easier with someone else." Zinnia turned to look at her husband, at the man who had ridden 3 days through a storm to apologize, who had built her a home with his own hands, who had loved her faithfully for 35 years. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "Every hardship we faced was worth it because we faced it together." Every joy was sweeter because we shared it. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give, a love that lasted a lifetime. How could I ever regret that? Isaac pulled her close, and they sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of red and gold. The ranch stretched out before them, over 1,000 acres now, with good horses and cattle, strong fences and full water tanks. The house they had built together stood solid and welcoming, filled with memories of laughter and love. "I still count myself the luckiest man alive," Isaac said. "The day you opened that door and let me explain was the day my life truly began." "We both got lucky," Zinnia said. "We found each other, lost each other, and found each other again. Not everyone gets a second chance like we did." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the evening sounds of the ranch, horses nickering in the pasture, cattle lowing in the distance, the wind sighing through the grass. This was their kingdom, built from nothing through hard work and determination. But more than that, it was their home, the place where they had raised their children and built their life together. As darkness fell and stars appeared in the vast New Mexico sky, Isaac and Zinnia finally went inside. They prepared for bed with the comfortable routine of decades together, and when they finally lay down, Isaac pulled Zinnia into his arms just as he had every night of their marriage. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Zinnia whispered back. "Always and forever." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. Two hearts that had found their way to each other through storm and struggle, through heartbreak and healing, through all the trials and triumphs that make up a life fully lived. The ranch continued to thrive under their stewardship, and when Thomas eventually took it over completely, he ran it with the same integrity and hard work his father had shown him. The other children visited often, bringing their own children and eventually grandchildren. The Durant family became well known and respected throughout New Mexico, a testament to the foundation Isaac and Zinnia had built. Isaac lived to be 78 years old, still working on the ranch until just a few weeks before his death. He passed peacefully in his sleep, Zinnia holding his hand. At his funeral, over 200 people came to pay their respects, sharing stories of his kindness and honesty. But it was Zinnia who gave the most fitting tribute. "My husband was the bravest man I ever knew," she said, standing straight and proud despite her grief. "He had the courage to come back after he left, the courage to tell me the truth even when it was painful, the courage to build a life from nothing. He taught our children and grandchildren what it means to be a person of integrity, and he loved me every single day of our life together. I am grateful for every moment we had." Zinnia lived another 5 years after Isaac's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent her days sewing and telling stories, keeping Isaac's memory alive for the younger generation. She never remarried, saying once was enough when you found the right person. On a spring evening much like the one where she and Isaac had sat watching the sunset years before, Zinnia passed away quietly in her sleep. Her children found her in the morning, a peaceful smile on her face, and they all agreed she had gone to be with Isaac, the love of her life. At her funeral, Rose read from a letter Zinnia had left, addressed to all her descendants. "To my beloved children, grandchildren, and those who come after, I have had a full and beautiful life, and I owe it all to love. Not the easy, simple kind of love, but the kind that requires courage and honesty and hard work. Your grandfather and I faced many challenges, but we faced them together, and that made all the difference. Remember that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. Choose wisely, choose well, and choose with your whole heart. And if you are lucky enough to find someone who rides 3 days through a storm to tell you they are sorry, someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth even when it hurts, someone who builds a life with you one day at a time. Hold on to them and never let go. That is the secret to a life well lived, finding someone to love and being brave enough to love them completely. With all my love, your grandmother Zinnia. There was not a dry eye in the church when Rose finished reading. The Durant family buried Zinnia next to Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could rest together for eternity with a view of the land they had built together. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from parents to children who remembered the story of Isaac and Zinnia. Every new generation heard about the stormy night when Isaac had appeared at Zinnia's door, about the 3 days he rode just to apologize, about the love that had grown from heartbreak into something beautiful and lasting. The cabin where they first lived was preserved and maintained, becoming a treasured family landmark. Couples would visit it on their anniversaries, standing in the place where Isaac and Zinnia had built their life together, drawing inspiration from their story. The silver necklace Isaac had given Zinnia on their 10th anniversary was passed down through the family, from mother to daughter, each generation adding their own story to its legacy. And the cradle Isaac had carved for baby Thomas rocked countless babies over the years, its delicate flowers worn smooth by time but still beautiful. In the town of Chloride, which eventually became a ghost town as the mines played out, there was a small historical marker that told the story of Isaac and Zinnia Durant, pioneers who had helped build the community. It spoke of their integrity, their hard work, and their enduring love. But the real monument to Isaac and Zinnia was not made of stone or metal. It was the family they had created, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their values forward into the world. It was the stories that were told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, keeping their memory alive. It was the love that they had proven was possible, love that could survive separation and hardship, love that grew stronger with time, love that truly did last forever. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew across the New Mexico desert and the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, the old-timers would swear they could see 2 figures sitting on the porch of that old cabin, holding hands and watching the sunset together, still in love after all these years. Their story a reminder that true love, once found, never really ends.